If after a year you still want to leave, I won't hold you back. I never thought there would come a day when I'd sign a love agreement. Not a legal contract. Not some student club game. But a handwritten piece of paper, crumpled, folded in four, that had lived in Cameron's wallet for 4 years. The day I read it again, we were 26. Both working. Both grown up. And also, by then, in love for nearly 3 years. At the bottom corner of the page, the scrawled blue ink was still there. If after a year you still want to leave, I won't hold you back. But for that 1 year, try being my boyfriend. Below it were 2 signatures. Jason Miller, Cameron Brooks. Every time I looked at it, I laughed. Because the person who wrote that bizarre agreement was Cameron. And the person who once insisted it was just a silly joke was me. People often ask, who confessed first? I always answer, neither of us. Because if you could call it a confession, no one on earth hands the person they like a 3-page agreement. For years earlier, the first day of enrollment at Hawthorne University in Colorado, I arrived on campus with exactly 2 old suitcases, a pickup truck borrowed from my uncle, and a modest amount of savings from 3 years working at a grocery store. My family wasn't poor, but we weren't well off either. My parents always said, "You're already 18. College is your life now. You have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet." I didn't blame them. Americans are used to that. So from the very first semester, I signed up for a job at the campus library, and on weekends I worked at a small coffee shop near the dorms. I counted every dollar, every used textbook, every meal. I had no time for parties, no time for love. Even less did I think I'd fall for a boy. At least, that's what I believed back then. Freshman orientation was packed. Over 800 people crammed into the auditorium. The president gave a speech. Clubs introduced themselves. Everything went exactly as I'd imagined. Until the very end. Professor said, "You'll all be part of the Campus Partner Program. Each student will be randomly paired with another. Not for group assignments. Not as roommates. But as a companion. You'll need to meet at least once a week throughout your entire freshman year." The whole hall started murmuring. Someone whistled. Someone laughed loudly. The professor continued. "Our research shows students with a campus partner drop out less and adjust to campus life faster." I didn't care much, until my phone buzzed. The name of my assigned partner appeared. Cameron Brooks, along with a strange little note. "Please be patient with your partner." I frowned. Patient? What did that mean? 10 minutes later, I met Cameron for the first time. Not in the auditorium, but behind the arts building. He was climbing a tree, literally. A guy about 6'1", sleeves rolled up on his white shirt, standing precariously on a branch trying to rescue a remote control airplane tangled among the leaves. I stood watching for almost a minute, not sure whether to help or just walk away. Right at that moment, crack, the branch broke. Cameron fell. But before he hit the ground, he still managed to clutch the airplane to his chest like it was a treasure. The first thing Cameron did after sitting up wasn't check for injuries. It was look at the airplane. "Thank God. It's fine." I burst out laughing. The laugh made him look up. Our eyes met. He stood, brushed the dust off his pants, then held out his hand. "You're Jason. I'm Cameron. Guess. Starting today, you'll have to be very patient with me." I looked at that hand for a few seconds, then took it. I had no idea that handshake would open the longest relationship of my life. It was also the first time I met someone who could turn anything strange into something perfectly normal with just a smile. And I never imagined, a year later, that very Cameron would set a handwritten agreement down in front of me, look me straight in the eye and say, "Jason, if you can't love me right now, that's okay. So, just sign here. Just for 1 year. Be my boyfriend." I looked at him like he'd lost his mind, and that was the moment everything began. Cameron Brooks was the kind of person no one could predict. If you met Cameron for the first time, you'd think he was the impulsive type. But stay close long enough, and you'd realize the exact opposite was true. Cameron wasn't reckless. He just had a completely different way of looking at life. While most people tried to avoid anything confusing, Cameron always ran straight toward it. That's why, right at our first meeting, after the tree-climbing rescue of the RC plane, Cameron didn't ask what I was majoring in, where I was from, or what subjects I liked. Instead, he asked, "Jason, do you believe two strangers can change each other's lives?" I looked at him for a few seconds. "We've known each other for about 2 minutes. Yeah. And you're already asking a philosophical question." Cameron laughed. "I'm just curious. I don't know." I answered honestly. "Maybe, yes. But it's probably rare." Cameron nodded like he'd just heard the answer he was hoping for. "I think so too. I'm hoping this time I found the right person." I didn't understand what he meant, and Cameron didn't explain. The campus partner program turned out to be more serious than I'd expected. Each week, paired students had to take part in some school-organized activity together. Some weeks it was a museum visit. Some weeks a lecture. Some weeks just grabbing coffee and filling out a survey about the college experience. Miss more than 3 sessions and both partners lost activity points. In other words, whether we wanted to or not, Cameron and I had to keep meeting. Our first session, we went to a small sandwich shop near campus. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. Cameron noticed. "Are you saving money?" "Yeah. I'll pay." "No need. You can pay next time." "I don't like owing people." Cameron rested his chin on his hand, watching me. "Do you always live this tense?" "I'm just being realistic." "And I'm not. I know. And yet you're still sitting here eating with me. Because otherwise I lose points." Cameron burst out laughing, loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to look. "I like you already, Jason." I frowned. "You mean as friends?" He added quickly. "Don't panic." I shook my head. Not panicking, but somehow my ears were burning. About 2 weeks later, I discovered Cameron was actually pretty well known on campus. Not because he was good-looking, though he genuinely was very attractive, but because it seemed like nearly every professor knew his name. Once, walking past the engineering workshop, an older professor called out, "Brooks, that 3D printer you fixed last week is running great." Cameron just smiled. "Good to hear." Another time, a janitor thanked Cameron for fixing her broken cart wheel for free. A security guard waved at him from far away. I got curious. "You know everyone?" "No." "Then why does everyone know you?" Cameron shrugged. "When I see something broken, I fix it. That's it." Just 3 words, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. One Friday afternoon, I stopped by the engineering workshop looking for Cameron. I'd heard he was there. The moment I walked in, I froze. The workshop had practically turned into a hospital. A broken coffee machine, a broken ceiling fan, a broken digital clock, a drone with a snapped wing, 3 laptops taken apart. Cameron sat in the middle of it all, wearing safety goggles, soldering iron in hand. Seeing me, he smiled. "Give me 5 minutes." I looked around. "You're fixing all of this?" "No." "Then why is there so much? People just keep bringing stuff." "You charge for it?" "No." "Why not?" Cameron paused. His expression suddenly turned quiet. "When I was little, my grandfather used to say, if you have the ability to fix something, fix it before you think about making money. Some things are valuable because of memory. So are some people." Somehow that sentence stayed in my head for a long time. Gradually, our mandatory meetings turned into habit. No one had to remind us anymore. We just kept finding each other. Different classes in the morning. Texts at lunch asking, "Where are you right now?" Night. If the library stayed open until midnight, we'd usually sit at 2 rows of desks facing each other. Not talking, just occasionally glancing up, seeing the other one was still there, then bowing back down to study. It was strange. Cameron's presence made those college days so much less lonely. Early October, the school held a club fair. I was going to walk past. Cameron grabbed my arm. "Help me with something." "Doing what?" "Hold this." He handed me a box of electronic parts, then ran up onto the outdoor stage. 5 minutes later, a homemade RC plane shot up into the air. It didn't just fly. It trailed a huge banner behind it. "Welcome, freshmen." The whole plaza burst into applause. Cheers rang out everywhere. I watched Cameron standing there in the sunlight, grinning like a kid who just pulled off the greatest prank of his life. I don't know why, I found myself smiling too. For the first time in months, I realized I was actually looking forward to coming to school every day. Not for the classes, but because I knew I'd see Cameron. That evening, the two of us sat on the roof of the dorm building, which was open to students for stargazing. The city glowed in the distance. The early autumn wind was a bit cold. Cameron suddenly asked, "Jason, have you ever liked someone before?" I went quiet. "Yes." "What happened?" "It didn't work out." "Did she know?" I laughed. "You're assuming it's a girl?" Cameron turned to look at me. His gaze was strangely calm. "No, I was just asking." I looked up at the sky. That person never knew. "What about you?" Cameron didn't answer right away. Much later, he said quietly, "I'm into someone right now. I'm not even sure if that person will ever look at me that way." I nudged his shoulder. "Then tell them. Maybe they like you too." Cameron smiled. "Yeah, maybe." I had absolutely no idea. The person Cameron was looking at, the person he was hoping would turn around and notice, was me. If there was one thing about Cameron I always found hard to understand, it was this. He rarely talked about his family. After nearly 3 months of knowing each other, all I knew was that Cameron's dad was an architect, his mom taught high school, and their home was in the suburbs of Seattle. That was it. Not because I never asked, but every time it came up, Cameron would smoothly steer the conversation elsewhere. Until one night in late November. It was snowing heavily that day. The library closed early because of a storm warning. Cameron and I decided to walk back to the dorms. We were only halfway there when his phone rang. 2 words lit up the screen. "Mom." He stared at the screen. Didn't pick up. The ringing stopped. 5 seconds later, it rang again. A 3rd time. A 4th time. By the 5th call, Cameron finally answered. "I'm busy tonight." "No. I already told you. I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving." Cameron's voice stayed calm, but I saw his hand tighten around his backpack strap. "I love you, Mom, but that's not going to change." "Sleep well." The call ended. We kept walking. Neither of us said anything. The cold wind gusted in waves. By the time we were almost back at the dorm, Cameron smiled again. "Hey, want some pumpkin pie?" I stopped. "You just fought with your mom." "Yeah. And you're thinking about pie? Because when you're sad, you should eat more." I looked at him. That was the first time I saw his smile look a little forced. That Thanksgiving, most students went home. The huge dorm building had only a scattered few rooms with the lights still on. I stayed because I couldn't afford a plane ticket back to Oregon. Cameron stayed too, without giving a reason. That night, we bought rotisserie chicken from the grocery store, some instant mashed potatoes, and a discounted apple pie. The cheapest Thanksgiving dinner of my life. Cameron raised his can of soda. "Cheers." "To what?" "To the 2 of us not going hungry." I laughed. "Cheers." "Cheers." The cans clinked softly, but somehow the mood felt warm. After dinner, Cameron pulled a Monopoly set out of his backpack. "Want to play?" "Why'd you bring that?" "Just in case." "In case of what?" "In case you got sad." I looked at him. "Maybe you're the one who's sad." Cameron didn't answer, just quietly set up the board. Around 11 that night, Cameron's phone lit up again. This time not his mom, his little sister. He stood out on the balcony talking for almost 20 minutes. When he came back in, his eyes were a little red. I pretended not to notice, just handed him a mug of hot chocolate. "Thanks." "No problem." Silence. A moment later, Cameron spoke up on his own. "My parents got divorced when I was 15. I nodded slightly. "My mom always wants the whole family together for the holidays. But He paused. People can't pretend to be happy forever. I didn't know how to respond. Cameron looked out the window. Jason. If one day you found out the person you loved wasn't what your parents expected, what would you do? I was caught a little off guard. Why are you asking that all of a sudden? Just hypothetically. I thought about it for a long while. I think I'd be really scared. Scared of losing my family. Scared of disappointing them. Scared of everything changing. What about you? Cameron smiled very faintly. I already went through being scared. A long time ago. I didn't understand that sentence. But something told me it wasn't just an offhand remark. After the Thanksgiving break, everything went back to normal. At least on the surface. Cameron still smiled. Still fixed things for everyone. Still cracked jokes in class. But sometimes, I'd catch him sitting alone in the workshop, staring into empty space for a long time. Like he was thinking about something he couldn't put into words. Early December. I was working an evening shift at the coffee shop. Around 8, the door opened. Cameron walked in. Done with class? Yeah. I'm waiting for you. 2 more hours. That's fine. So he sat at the table by the window, doing homework, reading, occasionally glancing up at me. Near closing time, the manager smiled and said quietly, "Your boyfriend's really patient." I was wiping down a table and froze. "He's not my boyfriend," she shrugged. "Really? I just saw him watching you for 2 hours straight. Thought you two were dating." I turned around, right as Cameron looked over at me too. Our eyes met. He smiled, a very gentle smile. My heart skipped a beat. I immediately looked away, told myself, it's probably just embarrassment. That's all. A week later, final exam season began. The whole campus was practically running on no sleep. Every night the library was packed. We decided to study in the design department study room instead. Around 2 in the morning, I fell asleep at my desk. When I woke up, there was a jacket draped over my shoulders. Cameron was still sitting across from me, laptop still open, headphones still on. But he wasn't studying. He was just quietly watching me. Seeing my eyes open, Cameron startled. "Sorry. Did I wake you?" I shook my head. "No. Why didn't you wake me up?" "You were tired. A little more sleep won't hurt." I pulled the jacket down. "It smells like you." "Huh. Cedarwood." Cameron laughed. "It's my fabric softener." Oh, I don't know why, but I felt a small pang of regret handing the jacket back to him. On the day of the last exam, something small happened, but years later, I'd learned just how significant it was. I went back to the lecture hall because I'd forgotten my wallet. Passing by the engineering club room, I heard Cameron's voice inside. "I think I should tell him." Someone else answered. "You're sure? If you don't say it, he might never know." Silence. Then Cameron laughed softly. "Yeah, I'll tell him." I was about to walk in and call out to him, but right then my phone rang. I turned away to answer it. When I turned back, the door was already open. Cameron walked out, smiling like always. "Want to go celebrate finishing exams?" I had absolutely no idea that in Cameron's jacket pocket at that moment, there was already a handwritten letter. The first letter, also the first confession, that he never once found the courage to give me. The girl who made Cameron give up on confessing. I had no idea that letter existed. If I had known, perhaps a lot of what happened afterward would have been different. But life rarely lets people know things in advance, especially when it comes to love. After final exams, Hawthorne's campus grew strangely quiet. Snow blanketed the walkways. The dorm buildings emptied out one by one as students headed home for winter break. Cameron and I both stayed until the very last day because of our jobs. During the day, I worked at the coffee shop. Cameron took on computer repairs for the school's tech office. In the evenings, we still ate together as always. Until one afternoon, when I met Emily Carter. Emily was in my media design class. She had reddish-brown hair, loved shooting on film, and always carried an old camera with her. We'd only talked a few times in class. That day, Emily walked into the coffee shop where I worked. Seeing me, she smiled. Jason, do you get off at 6? Yeah. I want to take you to dinner. I was a little caught off guard. Just the two of us? Emily nodded. I think it's about time. Before I could figure out what she meant, she'd already smiled and walked out. Not until the manager nudged my shoulder did it click. You're really oblivious. That girl was asking you out. I stood frozen for a few seconds. A date? That evening. I told Cameron about it. We were walking back to the dorms. I think she just wants to thank me for the presentation. Cameron went quiet. Doesn't seem that way to me. You think so? Yeah. If it were you, would you go? I asked. Cameron looked down at the pavement. Took him a while to answer. If you want to. And if you don't want to, don't say yes just to be polite. I nodded. Let me think about it. That night, Cameron barely said another word. I just figured he was tired. 2 days later, Emily found me again. This time right in front of the library. She handed me a ticket to the school's concert. Tomorrow night. Come with me. I hesitated. Right then, Cameron walked up from behind. What's going on? Emily turned to him. I'm asking Jason to come to the concert with me. The air suddenly felt strange. Cameron kept smiling. Sounds fun. Jason likes acoustic music. Emily looked at me, waiting for an answer. I looked over at Cameron. I don't know why, but I wanted to know what he was thinking. Cameron just smiled. You should go. I took the ticket. Okay. Emily thanked me happily and left. Once it was just the two of us. I nudged Cameron's shoulder. What do you think of her? She's good. Pretty. Smart. She'd suit you well. I laughed. You sound like you're setting me up on a blind date. Cameron laughed too. But that laugh didn't reach his eyes. The next evening, I went to the concert with Emily. The show was really good. She was easy to talk to, knowledgeable, polite, exactly the kind of person a lot of guys would like. After the concert ended, Emily took me for a walk around the lake on campus. After a while of silence, she took a deep breath. Jason. I like you. I froze. I know it's kind of sudden, but I didn't want to graduate and regret never saying it. I looked at Emily, a good person, sincere, brave. I should have been happy, but the first thing that came to my mind was Cameron's face. I wondered, what was Cameron doing right now? That thought startled even me. Emily was still waiting. I answered honestly, I'm sorry. I'm not ready to date anyone. I don't want to hurt you. Emily was quiet for a few seconds, then smiled softly. Is it because of someone else? I was about to say no, but the words caught in my throat, because I genuinely didn't know. By the time I got back to the dorm, it was almost 11 at night. The room was dark. I assumed Cameron was already asleep, but when I turned on the light, he was sitting by the window, a paper box in front of him. You're still up, waiting for you. How was the date? I sat down across from him. Emily confessed to me. Cameron's hand paused, just for a second. Then he smiled. Congrats. I turned her down. This time, Cameron looked straight up. Why? I don't know. I just didn't feel anything. Cameron looked at me for a long time, then nodded slightly. Okay. Just that. No further questions. Couldn't sleep that night. Around 3 in the morning, I got up for a glass of water. I noticed the door was left ajar. Light from the hallway spilling in. Cameron wasn't in the room. I went looking for him. Eventually found him sitting alone in the workshop. On the table was a crumpled piece of paper. A lighter beside it. Cameron watched a flame burn away the corner of the page. I was about to call out, when he tossed the rest of the paper into the metal bin. I couldn't make out the content clearly. Only caught a few words before they turned to ash. Jason. Say. For so long, I thought it was just a draft for some speech. I quietly went back to my room. Didn't bother him. Years later, After we were together, Cameron finally confessed. That had been the confession letter. The letter he'd meant to give me on the day of the last exam. But after learning that Emily liked me, he thought he'd come too late, and decided to burn it, to bury that feeling for good. What Cameron didn't know was, that same night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not Emily, not the confession, but Cameron. I didn't understand what that feeling was. I only knew, for the first time in my life, I was afraid that one day, Cameron would love someone else, and I'd no longer be the most important person in his life. I still didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of jealousy, even though, at the time, I hadn't yet realized exactly when I'd started falling for my best friend. I started getting jealous of someone I'd never even met. After the night Emily confessed, there were no strange conversations between Cameron and me, at least not on the surface. We still went to class together, still fought over the one coffee maker in the dorm, still argued over whether to watch a sci-fi movie or a horror movie on weekends. Everything seemed the same as before, but only I knew. Something inside me had changed. Spring semester began. The snow gradually melted. Hawthorne's campus filled with fresh green buds. Students poured back onto campus. The atmosphere felt livelier than ever. One Monday morning, when I walked into the dining hall, Cameron was already sitting at our usual table. But that day, there was a stranger sitting next to him. An Asian guy wearing glasses in an engineering department hoodie. The two of them were laughing. Seeing me, Cameron stood up immediately. "Jason, come here. Have you met Owen?" I shook my head. Owen extended his hand. "Great to meet you. I'm Owen. Just transferred from University of Michigan." I shook his hand politely. The three of us ate breakfast together. The conversation mostly revolved around classes, professors, and dorm life. I barely said anything, not because I disliked Owen, but because I wasn't used to seeing Cameron laugh that much with someone else. That afternoon, Cameron texted, "Cameron, heading to the workshop tonight to help Owen build a robot." I stared at the screen, started typing a reply, then deleted it. In the end, I just sent one word. "Jason, okay." About 5 minutes later, another text popped up. "Cameron, breakfast tomorrow?" I read it over and over. An unexpectedly childish thought crept into my head. If he's busy with Owen, why bother asking me? Even I could tell the thought was ridiculous, but I couldn't stop it. Over the next 2 weeks, Owen's name kept coming up more and more. "You know, Owen's really good at piano. Owen just fixed something in the lab. Owen likes Star Wars too. Owen also." I cut him off. "Do you like Owen that much?" Cameron looked confused. "Huh. I was just telling you stuff, right?" I looked down and kept eating, said nothing more. The mood at the table suddenly turned heavy. That night, I asked myself what was wrong with me. Owen was a good person, polite, friendly, hadn't done anything wrong. So why, the moment Cameron mentioned him, did I feel this irritated? I opened my laptop, typed into Google, "Why do I feel jealous of my best friend's new friend?" A wave of results appeared. Some articles said it was a normal psychological reaction. Some said it was a sign of dependency. One even wrote, "Sometimes you get jealous because your feelings for that friend aren't purely platonic anymore." I closed the laptop immediately. Ridiculous. I muttered to myself. No way. That weekend, the school held a robotics competition. Cameron and Owen were on the same team. I came to cheer them on. The gymnasium was packed. When Cameron's team won first place, the whole room erupted in applause. Instinctively, Owen threw his arms around Cameron. Just a hug between teammates. Completely normal. But I felt my heart sink. I turned to leave. Right then, Cameron spotted me. "Jason." He ran down from the stands, still sweaty from the competition. "Wait. I have something for you." Cameron dug through his backpack and pulled out a keychain with a character from an old comic book I liked. "For you." I was surprised. "When did you buy this?" "Yesterday. Walked past the comic shop. Remembered you said you liked it." I took the gift, suddenly felt ashamed. For a whole week, I'd been jealous of Owen, while Cameron had still been thinking of me the whole time. A month later, Owen unexpectedly invited both of us over to his new apartment for dinner. Just the three of us. After dinner, Owen stepped out onto the balcony to take a call. Only Cameron and I were left in the living room. I watched Owen's silhouette outside, then blurted out, "Do you like Owen?" Cameron was drinking water and nearly choked. "Huh. I mean, like, romantically." Cameron stared at me intently, long enough that I started to feel awkward. "You want the honest answer?" "Yeah. No. Never have." I let out a sigh of relief, so fast that even I noticed it. Cameron frowned. "Jason. Why'd you just sigh like that?" I stiffened. "I didn't. You did. I heard it. It's just..." I quickly made something up. "I was just worried that if you had a boyfriend, you wouldn't have time to hang out with me anymore." Cameron laughed. "If that's all it is, don't worry. No matter who I end up loving, you'll always matter to me." I don't know why. Hearing that, I felt happy and let down at the same time, because in my head there was only one question left. If Cameron ever fell in love with someone, would that person accept that I'd always be a fixture in his life? That night, walking back to the dorm, I didn't say much. Cameron didn't push either. He just handed me a can of soda, and the two of us walked quietly beneath the newly leafed trees. I had no idea that behind me, Cameron had been watching me for a long time, then let out a quiet sigh, as if he'd just made a very difficult decision. A decision that would mean the distance between us could never go back to what it was before.